Yours to melt by Rimu-Chi. CUTE. Velgrynds POV . It has been a month. A full cycle of nights and days, and with each dusk, I found myself doing the one thing I had sworn I'll do. Returning to that lake. A tranquil pool deep within Jura forest, veiled in ancient barriers and whispers, yet it had become the one place in this mortal world where time seemed to still itself. Every night, I descended there, wings wrapped tight about my pride, telling myself I simply had nothing better to do. That I was observing. Evaluating. And every night, he was there. Rimuru Ashra Tempest. Sometimes he sat upon the rocks, feet dipped into the water with all the thoughtless grace of a child. Other nights, he lay sprawled across the grass, arms folded behind his head, eyes tracing constellations he hadn't known until recently. He spoke. Oh, how he spoke. About goblins and wolves, about tools and trades, about ridiculous things like naming monsters and holding meetings about town laws. Foolishness. Tedious trivialities. And yet, I listened. I, Velgrynd, the scorching dragon, sovereign of fire and marshal of the Eastern Empire, found myself answering him. Not fully, not directly, but enough. A nod. A tilt of the head. A sharp scoff that could be interpreted, perhaps, as reluctant amusement. Every word he spoke, every light-hearted laugh, nod at the fortress I'd built within myself. And I hated that it felt so effortless. Over the past month, I watched a miracle unfold beneath the veil of night. The pitiful village he once called home, little more than a muddy cluster of crude huts, had transformed into a thriving city. Stone walls gleamed under the moonlight, streets lit with rudimentary lamplight. I saw ogres in blacksmith shops, orcs hauling lumber with eerie unity, goblins acting as guards, even lizardmen and beastmen cooperating over trade routes. Direwolves patrolled the perimeter with eerie intelligence, and dwarves crafted weapons with a skill that reminded me of the celestial smiths of old. These were creatures that once tore each other to shreds. Now they bowed under a single banner, his banner. All in less than 2 months. It had taken Rudra over a century to unite fragmented lands under his vision, and even then, I had to scorch rebellion after rebellion into ash. An empire forged in blood and compromise, with me, a true dragon. Ruling as marshal not out of desire, but necessity. To stabilize, to balance. Yet Rimuru had done what we never could. Monsters of clashing races, once irreconcilable, now labored shoulder to shoulder with dreams in their eyes and his name on their tongues. His nation wasn't just built, it blossomed. As though the world itself tilted to aid him. And worse still, he didn't even try. His naive, playful nature belied a mind frighteningly adaptable. He had adjusted to this world faster than most heroes do in a lifetime. And it made me wonder, was he truly Ashura? That ridiculous hope I had smothered under centuries of silence flared each time I saw his eyes glimmer gold beneath the moonlight. That same, strange gold that once watched over me in silence. That same silver-blue hair that danced like riverlight. But I wasn't foolish enough to let yearning cloud my judgment. Still, the doubt remained. A whisper, a flicker, what if? I wanted to know. I needed to know, and for the first time in millennia, I, Velgrynd, considered the unthinkable. Remaining here. Staking a part of myself in this burgeoning realm of foolish dreams and impossible harmony. The idea was laughable. Absurd. I had no place here. I had responsibilities far beyond these forests, far beyond that lake and its impossible king. I am a marshal of the Eastern Empire. I am the balance between heaven and hell. I am what keeps Rudra's fragile world from splintering under the pressure of chaos. With Guy Crimson ever lurking in the west, that red-haired devil who defied even Veldanava himself, it was my presence that dissuaded war. Guy. The first and strongest demon lord, the oldest of the primordials. The one who challenged my brother, and rather than submit, forged a dangerous friendship. He now kept my older sister, Velzard, at his side. The white ice dragon. The calmest and coldest of us. She plays his game from the frozen peaks, even as I maintain Rudra's from the imperial palaces. We three, the flame, the ice, the storm, once children of creation, now divided by fate. If I left the empire, the balance would shift, too far, too fast. Rudra needs me. Not just for strength, but for the illusion of control. Guy's presence demands a counter. And now, with Veldora suddenly returned and oddly tame, of all things, under Rimuru's care? It threatens to throw the entire world into chaos. 3 dragons. 3 players. I can no longer be a passive observer. Veldora had vanished for centuries after his sealing, a wild and tempestuous creature whose destruction required divine effort to contain. Yet here he was again, walking among mortals without a single rampage to his name. Laughing. Bragging. Behaving. Rimuru had done what no being had ever managed. He had befriended Veldora. If they rose together, if they became a third faction in this great game of power between Guy and Rudra, it would be nothing short of tectonic. I could no longer ignore it. I had to speak to Veldora. It had been too long since we shared words that weren't shouted in the middle of clashing skies and firestorms. And despite his arrogance, he was my younger brother. I needed answers, from him and from Rimuru. I stepped out from the marble balcony of my personal chamber in the Eastern Empire's central citadel, the obsidian tiles beneath my golden heels still warm from the day's sun wind whispered against the silk of my black cheongsam, the golden dragon embroidery shimmering with my every step. My long, dark blue hair rustled in the breeze, the twin buns that framed my crown firm, while the flowing strands danced freely down my back. Golden eyes lifted toward the sky, clear, vast, open. I exhaled slowly. The time for silent observation was over. With a flick of my wrist, I conjured flame, not to destroy, but to empower. My true form shimmered beneath my skin, and with one graceful motion, I spread my wings. Crimson, vast, and royal. The wings of a true dragon. They unfurled with a sound like distant thunder, and the wind bowed in reverence as I launched skyward, carving through the clouds with heat trailing behind me. Toward the west. Toward Jura Forest. Toward them. The sky parted before me as though it remembered my name. Clouds, once bold and billowing, gave way to my advance, scorched slightly by the pressure of my aura as I tore across the firmament. The land below, the chaotic, rotting continent known as Jura Forest, had once been a cesspool of monsters and lawless savagery. Yet each passing night, as I soared above it in silence, it changed. It grew. Today, it bloomed, and I was not prepared for it. What had merely been a promising village last month, one built on crude stone and hopeful sweat, had now become a city of luminous spires and curved roads, bridges suspended by magic, waterways flanked by flowering shrubs and crystalline lights. The monster races moved like citizens, not beasts. Coordinated, organized, even. Joyful. Direwolves ran errands in polished leather armor. Lizardmen carved marble slabs under dwarf supervision. Orcs harvested golden fields that didn't even exist here months ago. My golden eyes widened despite my intent. This was not a city, this was a capital. My jaw tightened. I clicked my tongue against the roof of my mouth. HMPH. Foolish. Wasteful. Impossibly effective. How did he do this? How dare he do this? I burned centuries for Rudra's empire, shattered mountains to build what he called order. And yet this little slime, had built a utopia on the backs of monsters in a fraction of that time. My wings bristled with indignation. I refused to be seen. Not now. Not like this. Hovering above his realm, gaping like some lost hatchling. I veered sharply westward, air hissing in my wake, and dove toward the place where I first met him. The lake. That secret spring nestled within enchanted woods, where the moon kissed the water in silence. That place was mine. But it, too, had changed. Where once stood only wild grass and sacred stillness, now rose marble arches and paved walkways. The lake remained at its heart, serene and unchanging, but it was now framed by an ethereal garden, lantern-lit trees, flowers of both mundane and magical origin, and, my gaze narrowed, a castle. A modest one, yes, but unmistakably regal. So this was his new residence? Of course it was. Even the very land was rearranging itself for him, bending like reeds in a storm. I landed on the flagstones beside the lake, heels tapping lightly upon enchanted stone. My wings folded and dissolved into motes of embered light, my presence dimming as I exhaled through my nose, arms crossed over my chest. I hated this. I hated that I didn't hate this. I looked around, no one. Not even a single curious spirit lingering in the trees. Good. My pride could still breathe here. He still hadn't built high enough walls to block my approach. Perhaps some fragment of him wanted me to come back. Or perhaps I simply imagined it, in the same way I imagined the warmth in his laugh each night as he told me stories I pretended not to care about. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the breeze tug at the long strands of my dark blue hair. My twin buns, perfectly tied, held firm. The embroidery of the golden dragon coiled over my cheongsam shimmered in the moonlight. I opened my eyes. Velgrynd-san? My body froze. I turned, slowly, deliberately, masking surprise behind a curtain of indifference. The voice belonged to her. Shizu. She stood at the edge of the path, dressed in her typical black garb, the mask hanging loosely on her side. That face, mature, soft, and composed, wore an expression of curious politeness. She tilted her head slightly, black hair catching the sunlight. "What are you doing here?" she asked gently, her voice unassuming. Not accusatory. Simply, inquisitive. I raised my chin a fraction higher. "I came to see Veldora." "Veldora-san?" she echoed. I gave a sharp, precise nod. Her eyes widened just a little. Then, smiling, she gestured for me to follow. "Okay. I'll take you to him. Rimuru-san and Veldora-san are talking about manga right now." "Manga?" I blinked. "What is that?" She laughed, gently, like wind through chimes. "You don't know? Well, I guess you wouldn't. It's a kind of illustrated book from my homeland. I used to read them back in Japan. They tell stories. Some of them silly, some very moving. Stories in pictures. Childish. And yet, before I could dismiss it with my usual scoff, she smiled again. "Would you like to try reading one?" I paused. My heart, traitorous thing that it was, skipped a beat. "Maybe. One." The word escaped before I could stop it. She tilted her head, amused. You look just like one of my students asking for candy." I scowled, cheeks prickling faintly with heat. "Do not mock me." "Never," she said warmly. "Come on. Rimuru-san has shelves full of them." Before I could protest, she reached out and took my hand. I flinched. Touch. Uninvited. I should have incinerated her hand on instinct. No one touched me without permission. But her fingers were warm. Gentle. Unthreatening. She reminded me, strangely, of Velzard. No, not quite. Velzard was frigid, calculating. Shizu was something else. Something rare. A big sister. How peculiar. Like Lucia maybe. We walked the palace halls, too lavish for a monster city, yet modest for a true imperial court. I kept pace beside her in silence, allowing the moment to stretch. Her presence was oddly calming. Even now, I did not yank my hand away. We arrived before a dark wooden door. "His office," she said. Shizu knocked. "Rimuru-san? Can we come in?" A muffled, "Sure," answered. She opened the door, guiding me inside. My eyes swept the room instantly, instinctively. Wide. Neat. No paperwork. Strange. Instead, a lounge space with low couches and a glass table, over which sat Veldo. The dragon in question shrieked in utter horror, leaping behind Rimuru like a startled deer. "Don't let her eat me." Rimuru blinked, halfway through hiding a parchment behind his back. He looked as if he'd been drawing something, but now stood stiffly, blinking at me in disbelief. "Velgrynd," he said, the name almost a question. "You're here." I narrowed my eyes. "You sound surprised." "No, I mean yes, welcome?" Veldora, still crouched behind him, whimpered, "Rimuru. Save me. You don't know what she's like." Rimuru turned, confused. "Why are you scared of her? She's your sister." "You don't understand," Veldora wailed, dramatically pointing at me over Rimuru's shoulder. "She's the scorched dragon, the one who incinerated an entire mountain range because someone called her adorable." I turned away. Just slightly. Just enough to hide the warmth blooming across my cheeks. It was ridiculous. He was being ridiculous. I was not blushing. "Wait." Veldora squinted, pointing again. "Sister Velgrynd, are you blushing?" "I am not," I snapped, my voice a whip of flame. Veldora screamed and ducked again. Shizu, trying not to laugh, said sweetly, "Rimuru-san, Velgrynd-shan came to visit Veldora-san." Rimuru, still visibly stunned, raised his hands. Oh okay, that's enough. Velgryn's our guest. Let's all welcome her properly. A few minutes had passed, and though I loathed how quickly I'd grown used to the gentle hum of life within this strange city, I remained seated beside Shizu, who had settled beside me with a grace that was almost too natural. Across from us sat that irritating brother of mine, Veldora, who looked unnaturally composed, save for the nervous twitch of his eye, and Rimuru, lounging on the opposite couch with an elegance I was reluctant to admit suited him. My golden eyes scanned the room as silence briefly reigned, broken only by the gentle click of footsteps. A girl, delicate in appearance and clearly full of reverence, entered and knelt to pour tea for us, her every movement precise and full of grace. The scent alone, fresh, earthy, with floral undertones, was enough to lift a brow in mild surprise. I glanced down at the steaming cup placed before me, its amber hue catching the light like molten topaz. This tea, it is unlike any I've had, I murmured, raising it to my lips, the warmth ghosting across my mouth. Fragrant, rich, but not overbearing. Who prepared this? It's made with freshly grown greenleaf and snowblossom petals, Shizu answered kindly, her voice always carrying a soft melody. We cultivated them near the central district. The climate here really helps. Freshly grown, I echoed, tapping the edge of the porcelain cup with a fingernail. TCH. I suppose not everything in this fledgling city is laughable. I caught Rimuru smiling faintly, as though proud of the compliment I never intended to give, infuriating. Still, Rimuru said, folding his arms and leaning forward, I didn't expect to see you during the day, Velgrynd. You've only come here at night, like some sort of, mystical lake ghost. I came to see Veldora, I replied with a dismissive flick of my hand, but I will return to the lake tonight, as always. Shizu turned toward me then, her gentle gaze probing deeper than I would have liked. Why do you go there every night, Velgrynd-san? She asked, her tone neither teasing nor mocking, just genuinely curious. The room fell to silence so thick it threatened to choke the air from my lungs. Even Veldora went utterly still beside Rimuru, who turned his head slightly. Shizu-san, Rimuru said gently, maybe, let's not press her on that. She must have her reasons. But I had already opened my mouth. I lost someone. Near that lake, I confessed, surprising even myself with the softness of my voice. Someone who once mattered, greatly. He promised to return to me, and though time has long since devoured that vow, my fingers tightened around the teacup. I continued to return. Night after night. Waiting. Searching. Shizu placed her hand gently over mine. Velgrynd-san, she said warmly, you're strong, but even strong hearts carry sorrow. If I may, I think he would be honored that you still wait for him. Rimuru tilted his head. The promise, he murmured. Sounds like something worth keeping. GCH, I scoffed, more at myself than at them. Don't twist this into something romantic. It's not weakness, I simply don't forget my debts. But Shizu only smiled. I'm glad you shared that, she said. And, Velgrynd, I'm glad I got to know you. You remind me of the younger girls I used to teach, so full of pride, strong-willed, but inside, yearning for someone to understand them. If you'd let me, I'd like to be like an older sister to you. I blinked. The words struck me more sharply than I anticipated. Older sister, me? Someone as grand as I? Compared to a child? I should have scorched her for such condescension. But instead, warmth stirred in my chest. HMPH. I suppose you're not entirely insufferable. Rimuru chuckled. You're warming up. That's dangerous. I fixed him with a glare. Speaking of danger, why do you care where I go, slime? Oh. Right, Rimuru said sheepishly. I was just wondering where you live. I mean, I thought, maybe, you were considering staying here. In my nation. I mean, it's not technically a nation yet, but you get the image. I narrowed my gaze, inspecting his expression for mockery, but found none. I live in the Eastern Empire, I replied coolly. I serve as marshal. I have no interest in abandoning my position. Ah. I see. So, that's a no, huh? Rimuru muttered, scratching the back of his head with a half-hearted laugh. Worth a shot. A strange twist coiled inside me, was that, disappointment in his voice. My eyes drifted to Veldora, who now buried half his face behind a worn manga book, clearly pretending to read. What's wrong with you? I asked him, raising a brow. Why so silent? Veldora peeked out from behind the book like a child caught mid-mischief. I just didn't know what to say. And what happened to your chaotic nature? I continued, folding my arms. You used to roar and rampage like a beast without a leash. Now you sit like a lapdog. You mean rampaging? Rimuru added helpfully. I gave a curt nod. Veldora suddenly stood up with all the misplaced dignity of a court jester. I've matured, dear sister, he declared. Through Rimuru's friendship and the great art of manga, I have achieved spiritual elevation. Achieved spiritual idiocy, perhaps, I said icily. Mature, you claim. I see only a toddler in a dragon's skin. Perhaps you require my guidance to truly grow, through a bit of pain. He yelped and dove back behind Rimuru. Velgrynd, Rimuru said with a nervous chuckle. Veldora's childish, sure, but I think he's matured, a bit. But if he grows too mature, Shizu added thoughtfully, it wouldn't really be Veldora, would it? I stared at them both, then let out an exasperated sigh. TCH. Then let the fool remain a fool. Shizu suddenly clapped her hands. Oh, Rimuru-san, did you know? Velgrynd wants to read manga too. Both Rimuru and Veldora froze like statues. Wah, seriously? Rimuru blinked. You? Read manga? Veldora exclaimed, shocked beyond reason. I turned away, hiding the warmth rising to my cheeks. I didn't say I wanted to, she offered. I merely didn't decline. That's the same thing. Rimuru laughed. I was curious, I muttered, voice low. That's all. Well, you're welcome to read anything in my collection, Rimuru said cheerfully. Help yourself to the bookshelf anytime. Actually, I said, fixing him with a narrowing stare, what I really want to see is that drawing you tried to hide when I entered earlier. Rimuru's smile shattered. That was nothing important. Oh. I leaned in, eyes glittering with amused menace. Then show me, unless the great Rimuru Ashra Tempest is afraid. He waved his hands in a panic. It's really nothing, just a sketch, definitely not a secret, ha ha ha. Suspicious, I said, smirking as I sipped my tea again, watching his embarrassment with no small delight. Yes. This nation of his was still young, still laughably idealistic. But it had charm. And maybe, just maybe, so did he. And what about you, Shizu? Rimuru asked, voice trying too hard to sound casual, eyes darting like a cornered animal. You're not interested in seeing a silly sketch, right? Oh, but I am, Shizu replied, the warm teasing tone of hers not unlike a mentor chiding a fidgety child. Come now, Rimuru-san. You were drawing something so secretively earlier, surely you're not hiding anything indecent? I watched with mild amusement as his slime composure cracked. What? Indecent? Of course not, Rimuru stammered, practically flinging himself toward the table in a flurry of robes and desperation, grabbing the offending paper and pressing it behind his back like a guilty criminal caught red-handed. Shizu stood slowly, every movement regal and assured, her long hair swaying gently as she walked toward him. Then let me see it, she said again, her tone soft but unyielding, much like a sword wrapped in silk. Nope. No can do, Rimuru protested, stepping back, then to the side, then spinning to block her view, his entire form radiating panic. It's not ready, it's rough, sketchy, like, emotionally rough, not artistically rough. I mean it is rough artistically too, but, just no. You're acting like a kid who just got caught with a secret crush drawing, Shizu said flatly, planting her hands on her hips. Come on. Hand it over. I'm not going to laugh. You say that now, Rimuru muttered, defeated, as she loomed like an unstoppable force of maturity and grace. The dynamic between them was curious. Familiar. As if they had once danced this very same rhythm countless times before I arrived here. One a pestering younger brother, the other a tolerant elder sister. I would never admit it aloud, but I envied their closeness in that moment. With a heavy sigh and a theatrical slump, Rimuru extended the paper like it was his last will. Fine. But no laughing. Shizu took it, looked at it, then promptly burst into laughter, covering her mouth only out of politeness. Her shoulders trembled from the effort to contain herself. Veldora perked up like a child who just heard the word, cake. What is it? What are you laughing at? Show me. He scrambled over and peered over Shizu's shoulder. And then he, too, exploded into laughter, falling back onto the couch and clutching his stomach like he was under attack. Rimuru turned a vivid shade of red. Wah. Come on, it's not that bad. I put a lot of work into that. Why, you drew this from memory? Veldora wheezed. The cute versions. PFFT. She's holding a rose like a romantic heroine in a fairy tale. Ha ha ha. I didn't draw it to be funny. Rimuru cried out, voice breaking slightly with humiliation. It's supposed to be poetic. Shizu turned back toward the couch and sauntered over, holding the drawing delicately in both hands. I saw it then, my gaze locking onto the image before I could even voice my protest. Wait, don't show it to her, Rimuru started, but it was too late. It was me. Standing beneath a canopy of stars, a full moon suspended above me like a sentinel. I was poised gracefully at the edge of the lake, holding a single crimson rose with a rare tenderness in my expression, my long hair flowing like ink across the page, shimmering with subtle hints of sapphire. In the upper corner, a miniature chibi version of myself pouted adorably with crossed arms. In the opposite corner, another version beamed, soft and playful. A rush of something unnameable surged through me. Cute, I mouthed without thinking, my eyes refusing to move from the details. Each stroke careful, as if the artist had feared tarnishing what he saw. My cheeks warmed, and I hated the sensation. It was beautiful. The kind of beauty one would never expect from the hands of a monster, and yet, it came from him. Rimuru fumbled to explain himself. I swear it's not weird. I thought you were too beautiful to be real, okay? I was trying to capture that feeling. That's all. It's not a pervy thing. Shizu and I turned to him slowly, both of us wearing the same unreadable expression. Pervert, we said in unison. I'm not, Rimuru shouted, waving his hands frantically. It's an appreciation thing. Artistic admiration. I just wanted something to remember. No, not like that either. I just wanted to draw you, so at least I had your image somewhere, okay? His face turned beet red, and he looked away with a huff. Bawahaha. Veldora cackled. He's so flustered, oh ho, to think my best friend is smitten. This is delicious drama. Shizu nudged me gently with her elbow, voice lowered in amusement. You know, I think he likes you, Velgrynd-san. I narrowed my eyes at her but said nothing, turning my face slightly away, pretending to focus on the drawing once more. My heart, however, had no such discipline. It fluttered in my chest, a traitorous thrum that I despised and cherished all at once. I liked that he saw me this way. But I was Velgrynd. I was flame incarnate. Pride made manifest. I should have scorned such a vulnerable reaction, but instead, I found myself hiding a blush behind my gloved hand. TCH. Pathetic. I rose from the couch, suddenly eager to regain control over myself. It's time for me to leave, I said curtly. Already? Rimuru asked, rising as well. I ignored him and walked toward the door, my heels clicking against the polished floor. Shizu moved to follow. I'll be leaving, then, I said, pausing only briefly. Wait. Be careful out there, Rimuru called, clearly uncertain whether I would ever return. Behind me, Veldora peeped over the couch and whispered, I shall remain hidden, lest she educates me again. Coward. I glanced once at Shizu beside me, then forward again. The drawing remained with me, burned there more indelibly than fire itself. I was power. I was pride, and yet, that drawing had melted something within me. The path from Rimuru's dwelling to the lake, now transformed, curiously, into a flourishing garden that stretched like a living painting beneath the starlit sky, was lined with softly glowing lanterns that hovered midair, suspended by some gentle magic. The wind carried a hint of sakura and blooming plum blossoms, their scent mingling with the damp coolness of the nearby waters. It should not have been possible. This place, it was once an untouched glade, a sacred silence veiled in solitude, yet now it thrummed with quiet life, as though his presence alone had willed beauty into existence. I walked beside Shizu, her steps light and soundless, as if she were part of the dreamscape itself. Her presence was strangely comforting, though I would never say it aloud. There was something about her calm wisdom, her steady aura, the way her gaze did not judge yet never faltered. In some way I could not fully explain, she reminded me of Lucia. And perhaps, more bitterly, of what I never allowed myself to have. You didn't say much after that drawing, Shizu remarked, her eyes flicking to me from the corners of her vision. I thought you might slap him. HMPH. I kept my voice aloof, arms folded tightly across my chest, the folds of my cheongsam fluttering around my legs as the wind tugged at them. Why would I lower myself to acknowledge such childish flattery? It's beneath me. Shizu chuckled, her tone amused. You looked moved. My eyes narrowed slightly. I was not. But even as I said it, I could feel the weight of the parchment hidden within the folds of my glove, pressed against my arm like a forbidden ember. I hadn't planned to take it. I truly hadn't. Yet somehow, amidst the flurry of their teasing and laughter, my hand had moved with a will of its own, and before I even realized what I was doing, I had taken the drawing, his drawing, and hidden it. Why? Why did I do such a thing? Velgrynd, scorched dragon, the very incarnation of destruction and pride, a being who had witnessed the end of civilizations and stood against demon lords without falter. Why would I steal a drawing like some shy maiden in a bard's tale? I could not explain it. Only that I needed to keep it, as if parting with it would rob me of something irreplaceable. I think you're kinder than you let on, Shizu said gently, her gaze fixed forward. You act so proud and distant, but I see the way you soften around him. You're just like a tsundere from the novels. What did you call me? I asked coldly, aghast at the comparison. She smiled faintly. It means someone who pretends to be cold, but is secretly affectionate. I am not affectionate, I snapped. I simply tolerate his presence. Barely, and only because he has piqued my curiosity. Oh, she said, just curiosity. Of course, I muttered, clutching my arms tighter, as though the contact might smother the way my heart leapt whenever he looked at me with those ridiculous eyes. As if his very gaze was asking me to stay. We came upon the lake then, now encircled with budding lotuses and silver fireflies. The moon reflected off the water in fractured brilliance, and the stars were mirrored so clearly in the surface that one could almost forget where the sky ended and the earth began. This place, it was no longer my sanctuary, it had become his. I turned to Shizu, masking the strange ache in my chest with cold civility. I'll be leaving now. Come back, she said simply. I blinked. That gentle voice, those words, spoken without expectation, without demand, somehow struck deeper than any command from Rudra or parley with Velzard. Before I could stop myself, I nodded. Only once, but it was enough. And then, without another word, I spread my wings, great fans of radiant crimson light that lit the garden in hues of dawn, and took to the skies. The air rushed past me in exhilarating torrents as I soared above the glimmering canopy, yet even as the wind tried to numb my senses, I could feel it again. That blush, traitorous and vivid, spreading across my cheeks. I cursed softly, pulling higher into the sky. How could a single mortal cause such turmoil within me? A part of me, a cold, calculating part forged by centuries of loyalty to the Empire, screamed at me to dismiss these feelings as weakness, to bury them beneath the weight of my rank and my duty. I was Marshal Velgrynd. I was the blade of Rudra, the balancing force between empire and chaos. I had no time for these foolish emotions. And yet, my hand drifted again to the hidden drawing. That damned drawing. He had drawn me as though I were the most precious thing he had ever seen. Not merely a dragon. Not a god of flame. But, me. The real me. The one I had long buried beneath duty and pride. I opened the parchment slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse of the rose in my painted hand, of the smiling miniature versions that mocked me with their purity. My face flamed anew. Cute, I muttered again, eyes narrowing. No, I must not become attached. And yet, what if I stayed? Not forever. Just a while. Long enough to understand what this strange warmth in my chest meant. Long enough to see if it was merely fascination or something more dangerous. Something real. But how? My duties in the Eastern Empire were absolute. Rudra relied on me. Damrata watched my every move. And if Rudra caught wind of my emotional compromise, he would never let me hear the end of it. Unless, my mind ticked forward, calculating possibilities, processing strategies. Parallel existence, yes. My extra skill, one born of ultimate mastery over my astral body. I could divide my essence, project a clone powerful enough to deceive even the strongest beings. I had rarely used it outside combat. It drained immense energy. But, if I deployed it cleverly, then one Velgrynd could remain in the Empire, fulfilling her duties, while the other stayed here. With him. It's worth considering, I murmured to myself, folding the drawing again and pressing it close. For now, I would return. I would resume my role, my power, my pride. But tonight I had allowed my heart to stray. And perhaps I would not pull it back. It had been a week since that day, since Velgrynd, scorched dragon of the flame, had stepped unannounced into his office alongside Shizu, and with one elegant glance, turned the air in the room into something heavier, sharper, inexplicably charged. A week since she had seen the drawing Rimuru so desperately tried to hide. A week since her unreadable golden eyes had briefly widened upon seeing herself rendered in moonlight, holding a rose, surrounded by stars. And then, the drawing vanished. Rimuru had searched for it everywhere. At first, he thought it had simply slipped beneath the table or been taken as a prank by Veldora. But when it didn't turn up after the first hour, then the second, then the day, he began to suspect something more cunning. He had asked Shizu directly, only to receive a knowing smile and an unconvincing, "I don't know what you're talking about." Veldora had laughed himself hoarse when questioned, roaring that Rimuru's tragic artist's soul had finally bloomed, but swore on every manga volume he possessed that he hadn't taken it. Shuna, Shion, Benimaru, none of them had seen it. Even Sue had been assigned a covert operation to investigate its disappearance. And when he turned up empty-handed, Rimuru knew the matter was truly lost to time, or to someone far more competent. Still, each night, Velgrynd returned. She never said a word about the drawing, never commented, never teased. But she came to the garden lake without fail, her presence like a blood-red comet etched in the dark velvet of the sky, wings spreading wide before she descended with elegance so divine, the stars themselves might pause in reverence. And yet she rarely spoke. Rimuru had tried, oh how he had tried, to get her to open up, asking about her day, her interests, even awkwardly offering tea and sketchbooks, but her replies were always curt, composed, frustratingly regal. Tonight, as he sat in his office, chin resting on the palm of his hand while the sun melted lazily beyond the horizon, he sighed heavily and asked aloud, "Why's she like this, great sage? Why won't she just talk more?" Answer. Personality analysis. Subject. Velgrynd. Classification. True dragon. Codename. Scorched dragon. Traits include extreme pride, high regard for power, and emotional resistance. Behavior is consistent with draconic hierarchy and cultural superiority. So, you're saying she's just naturally arrogant? Affirmative. Emotional suppression likely due to combination of pride, instinctual dominance, and unfamiliar emotional stimuli related to the user. Additional factor. Confusion. Confusion? Rimuru blinked, sitting up straighter. Clarification. Velgrynd is unaccustomed to vulnerability or emotional attachment. Exposure to the user has created internal conflict between pride and desire. In summary, both pride and arrogance are present. The user is perceived as a threat and anomaly. The subject does not dislike the user, she is unsure how to proceed. Huh. He scratched the back of his head, gaze drifting toward the window. The garden lake lay just beyond the horizon, and he knew, deep in his core, that she would be there again tonight. Same time. Same place. As if the stars themselves had written it into fate. So that's just Velgrynd, huh? He murmured to himself, more fondly than he intended. Proud, impossible, frustrating, and somehow, kinda amazing. The week had not been idle in other ways, either. Just 2 days prior, King Gazel Dwargo had arrived in Tempest in person. A surprise visit, though nothing that Rimuru couldn't handle. The mighty king had brought with him a gift, or perhaps an offering. Vesta, the once disgraced dwarf researcher who had been exiled for his crimes in Dwargon. But Gazel, in his pragmatic wisdom, knew talent when he saw it, and offered Vesta to Rimuru with the simple statement. "He's a fool with too much pride, but a genius nonetheless. You'll make use of him where I could not." Rimuru, of course, accepted. And that very night, with Shizu standing beside him like a gentle guiding flame, Gazel officially signed an alliance with Rimuru's nation. It was Shizu who placed her hand on his shoulder and gently suggested the name, Kingdom of Tempest. A name born from the very storm that had surrounded Rimuru's evolution.
At first, he considered something else. Maybe something cooler. But Xian, Shuna, Rigurd, Benimaru, Soka, Hakuro, Geld, Ranga, and even Ranga's proud old father Riga, insisted.
City of Rimuru. Not because of ego, Xian had declared, eyes blazing with sincerity, but because you're the reason we have a future. He had tried to argue, they ignored him, and so it was set. Thus, the monster kingdom of Tempest was born, and its heart, its shining core, was the city of Rimuru. The news spread fast. Within days, the guild master of the Bloomin Kingdom, Fuse, arrived with an entourage, including the familiar adventurer trio of Yum, Eren, Guido, and Kaval. Rimuru welcomed them personally. Fuse had come to investigate, to determine whether the new nation posed a threat to humanity. Rimuru, with his typical calm, made it clear. If humans attacked first, Tempest would annihilate them, no matter their motives. Mercy would not be offered twice. And while Fuse seemed cautious, even uneasy, he respected Rimuru's candor. He proposed an alliance. Rimuru declined. He had no intention of playing politics with countries that still doubted the worth of monsters. But Yum stayed. Not for politics, but for the food, and the weapons, and the warmth of a place that did not judge. Now, as night crept across the sky like ink spilled from a celestial quill, Rimuru found himself fidgeting, an odd feeling, even for him. He was waiting again. Waiting for her. He gazed out over the rooftops, eyes drawn to the garden below. There was something about her. Something ancient. Something familiar. And not in the way you remember a friend. No, it was deeper. Stranger. As if his soul recognized hers across lifetimes. Why do I feel like I've known her forever? He asked quietly. Answer. Emotional recognition of soul signature indicates deep subconscious connection. Possibility. Feelings of romantic attraction. Classification. Love. Wait, what? Definition. Love is an intense emotional state characterized by affection, attachment, and desire for union. Indicators present. Confirmed. User is in love with Velgrynd. Stop. Rimuru's face flushed hot as steam, and he covered his face with both hands. That's enough. I don't need a dictionary entry. Geez. Acknowledged. He sighed, body deflating as he slumped in his chair. Somewhere far above, the moon had begun its slow rise. He could already feel the shift in mana, the soft pulse in the air that told him the scorched dragon would soon descend once more. But this isn't just love, is it? He whispered to himself, voice nearly lost to the silence of the room. It wasn't just infatuation or a passing crush. It wasn't the admiration he had for Xian's loyalty or Shuna's grace. It was something heavier, deeper, something that stirred the very essence of what he had become. It was fire and stars and silence. It was her, Velgrynd. Whatever this was, it was something even beyond love. The night had fallen quietly, like a silk curtain drawn across the horizon, veiling the world in shades of midnight blue and silver mist. Stars blinked into place with a quiet reverence, as if bearing witness to something ancient, something sacred. A gentle breeze rustled the trees surrounding the garden lake, carrying with it the scent of dew-soaked grass and moonlit water. It was a scene Rimuru Tempest had come to know intimately, this hidden sanctuary beneath the stars where the boundary between man and myth dissolved. And she was already there. Velgrynd, the scorched dragon. She sat atop her favored obsidian rock, legs crossed regally, arms folded as if carved from divinity itself, her long dark blue hair fluttering like midnight fire behind her. Her golden eyes, sharp and luminous, were cast upward, fixed on the full moon's reflection upon the lake's surface. A gaze that seemed to pierce through time itself. Dressed again in that sleek black cheongsam, embroidered with curling golden dragons that shimmered when she moved, she exuded both majesty and distance. A figure untouchable. Unclaimed. Rimuru's steps slowed as he entered the garden, the soft grass yielding beneath his feet like a carpet laid for royalty. He paused for a breath, watching her in silence. Awed, as always, by her presence. "So, you're here," he said softly, smiling. "Just like I thought." Velgrynd didn't look at him. Her chin lifted slightly, as if to remind the moon itself that she was older, greater, more enduring. "I come here every day," she replied, her voice smooth as tempered steel, "even before your birth." Rimuru chuckled, rubbing the back of his head as he stepped closer. Yeah, I understand. The silence between them stretched, filled only by the quiet murmur of the lake and the soft rustling of leaves. He didn't know how to break it without sounding awkward, and yet, awkwardness was beginning to feel like a constant around her. By the way, Velgrynd, he began, taking a seat nearby on a smaller stone, I've been meaning to ask, that drawing, you didn't happen to take it, did you? That did it. Velgrynd blinked, once, then turned her face sharply to the side, her elegant profile outlined against the moonlight. The faintest tinge of rose dusted her cheek. No, she said quickly. Why would I take that childish piece of paper? Rimuru blinked, then laughed nervously. Hey, yeah, you've got a point there. I mean, it's not even that good, probably embarrassing to look at. But her blush lingered. He leaned back, letting the quiet wash over them again. You know, he said after a pause, you could still come to Tempest. Everyone there's pretty laid back, Shuna's cooking is great, and Veldora would love to see you more often. Though maybe not too often, or he might get annoying. I decline, Velgrynd said immediately, folding her arms. I have no interest in living among mortals. Right. Rimuru tried to keep the disappointment out of his voice, but he knew she heard it. Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp and unreadable. Then, after a moment's pause, she added, quietly, I'll think about it, later. That alone was enough to make his heart skip. Thanks, he said, smiling. That means a lot. Velgrynd turned her face back toward the moon. If she was affected by his words, she did not show it. But her shoulders, usually held stiff with pride, seemed to relax just slightly. I named the nation, by the way, Rimuru said, more casually now, watching the lake. We're officially recognized as the Monster Kingdom of Tempest. The capital's, the city of Rimuru. Not my idea, I swear. He thought he caught the faintest twitch at the corner of her lips, perhaps amusement or disdain. Maybe both. How presumptuous, Velgrynd muttered, but her tone lacked venom. I didn't want it, Rimuru protested. Everyone else forced me. Apparently naming cities after yourself is cool now. She huffed, golden eyes half-lidded. Your people are more foolish than I expected. And yet, Rimuru grinned, you still come here every night. Velgrynd didn't respond, but her blush deepened, just slightly. The moment lingered, suspended in starlight and stillness. And then, like always, she rose to her feet with fluid grace, brushing non-existent dust from her gown. I'm leaving, she announced. I've wasted enough time. You always say that, Rimuru said softly, but you always come back.
Velgrynd glanced at him from over her shoulder, golden eyes narrowing, but she said nothing. Then, in a gust of wind and glimmering flame, she vanished into the night sky, her wings beating once, twice, then gone.
Rimuru watched the sky for a while, eyes trailing her fading presence. Then, with a sigh, he sat down on the grass, stretching out his legs as the stars continued their quiet vigil overhead. I wonder, he murmured aloud, does she already have someone in her life she loves?
A soft voice answered behind him. I don't think she has one.
Rimuru turned, surprised. Shizu stood a few steps behind, her ethereal form barely brushing the grass, moonlight clinging to her like a second skin. You think? Rimuru asked, blinking. Shizu nodded, stepping closer. Then, with a quiet breath, she lowered herself beside him, lying on the grass and looking up at the sky beside him. Velgrynd-chan, she looks arrogant and prideful. And she is. But beneath all of that? She has an easily melting heart. She just hides it well. Rimuru turned his head toward her. You think so? I do. Shizu smiled. But more than that, I think you think so too. He looked away, blushing slightly. I don't know.
Shizu chuckled. Hey, Rimuru-san, why not ask her directly?
Ask what? Ask her out, she said simply, staring at the stars. Confess. Rimuru nearly choked. You mean like, confess? She nodded. I don't think that'll work. He scratched his head. She's not really the type who'd respond well to something like that. I mean, I might end up getting roasted alive.
Maybe, Shizu said, rising to her feet once more, brushing off invisible dust. But you're acting like a child, Rimuru-san. Try listening to yourself before doing anything reckless.
Then, with a last smile, she turned and vanished into the breeze, her presence fading like mist in the morning. Rimuru sat there for a long time, alone once more. The night air was cool, but not cold, comforting. Great sage, he said at last, sighing, listening. Shizu's being too teasing lately, don't you think? Incorrect. Shizu's behavior is designed to encourage the user to recognize internal emotional states. Conclusion. She is attempting to help the user listen to his heart. Yeah, Rimuru murmured, figures. He remained there a moment longer, staring up at the sky where Velgrynd had disappeared. And then, slowly, he stood, dusting off his clothes and turning back toward the palace. The moon watched him from above, silent and silver. And Rimuru walked away. Next day morning broke like molten gold pouring through the tall glass windows of the Lord's office in the heart of Tempest, gilding every edge of paper and polished wood with warm luster. Sunlight painted the gentle arcs of light across the desk where Rimuru sat hunched over a mountainous stack of parchment, each one lined with requests, reports, and declarations that only seemed to multiply the more he finished them. His quill danced tirelessly, but his expression bore the weariness of an administrator confined to responsibility rather than battle. Across from him, resting comfortably in a seat far too soft for its antique dignity, Shizu Izawa sipped from a porcelain teacup, her features calm, eyes half-lidded as steam coiled upward like dreams drifting from her past. A remnant anchored to this world by their shared bond. She enjoyed these quiet mornings with him, where the silence of paperwork and the perfume of roasted leaves created a fleeting peace.
And then, status update. Unique skill, Stella, synchronization has increased. Adaptation to unknown energy now stabilized at 15%. Magical absorption rate increased by 50%.
The voice of Great Sage dropped into Rimuru's mind like a stone into still water. He blinked once, quill pausing mid-swoop, his brow furrowed. What was that? He muttered aloud, and though Shizu glanced at him, she said nothing, used to these moments where he spoke not to her, but to someone else only he could hear.
Great Sage, Rimuru said in his mind, can you explain what that means?
Affirmative. Unique skill, Stella, is accelerating your metaphysical development. Adaptation to unknown energy has reached a threshold permitting minor reality-altering functions. Would you like to review your current status? Yeah, go ahead. Show me. And then it unfolded before his mind's eye, like scripture carved into divine stone, each line searing itself into his consciousness. Name. Rimuru Ashura Tempest Age, 2-month species, slime.
Protection. Crest of Storm. EP. 913,120. Unique skills.
1. Great Sage, an analytical type unique skill that grants the user an advanced, autonomous mental entity capable of processing vast quantities of information instantly. Functions. Thought acceleration, parallel processing. Analytical appraisal, skill synthesis and mutation.
Autonomous computation support. Emotional suppression, toggleable.
2. Predator, a devour type unique skill that allows the user to absorb, analyze, and mimic the abilities of anything consumed. Functions. Predation. Absorbs targets into a separate stomach dimension.
Analysis. Breaks down targets to extract useful information or skills.
Mimicry. Allows the user to take on the form and abilities of analyzed creatures. Isolation. Stores hazardous materials separately. Stomach. A multidimensional space for storing absorbed matter. 3. Stella. Infinite growth through magicals and unknown energy. Daily stat increase, adaptability mutation, and world-shaping capabilities upon certain thresholds. Extra skills. Universal perception, multi-layer barrier. Thought communication, magic sense, body morph, auto-defense system. Elemental manipulation, magicule reactor resistances. Fire, cold, poison, mental, pain, spirit, paralysis, time. Nullifications. Physical, magical, status effects, soul, corrosion, curse, illusion, law manipulation. Rimuru's eyes widened. His quill clattered onto the desk. Over 900,000 EP, he muttered in disbelief. I was around 200,000 just a few weeks ago. That's nearly 5 times what I had. He rubbed his temples, awe creeping into his voice. Great Sage, what is this unknown energy exactly? Insufficient data. Ongoing analysis indicates it may originate outside this dimension's natural laws. However, partial adaptation grants user ability to utilize creation element. Parameters now allow the creation of basic lifeforms, objects, and abstract structures if conceptual understanding is sufficient. So you're saying, I can create things now? He murmured. Like, laws or even living beings? Affirmative. However, failure to meet conceptual and energetic thresholds may result in backlash or death. Right. That's a terrifying clause to drop at the end. Still, a slow grin formed on his face, but still, that's sweet. He leaned back in his chair, the hum of untapped power crackling faintly beneath his skin like coiled thunder. Shizu glanced at him curiously, raising a brow. You seem excited, she commented gently. Before Rimuru could answer, Great Sage interrupted again, this time, with a voice more urgent than usual. Alert! High-density magical presence approaching Tempest at extreme speed. Estimated time of arrival, 5 minutes. Unknown entity. Magical's output exceeds Demon Lord class threshold. His non-exist blood ran cold. Wait. What? Warning level, Crimson. Preparing defensive calculations. He stood from his chair so quickly that Shizu nearly spilled her tea. What's wrong? She asked sharply, standing beside him. I have to go check something out, Rimuru said quickly, his voice tense yet trying to sound calm. It's nothing. Just, wait here, all right? She tilted her head, concern etched into her features. Are you sure, Rimuru, what's going on? No time to explain, really. I promise I'll be right back. He closed his eyes, thoughts flaring with command. Great Sage, teleport me to the hilltop overlooking the southern perimeter, now. Acknowledged. In a shimmer of translucent azure light, his figure bent and vanished, leaving only the faintest ripple of energy in the empty air behind him. The world flickered into place with a faint surge of displacement magic, the scent of fresh grass and morning dew filling Rimuru's senses as he materialized atop the southern hillcrest that overlooked the Valley of Tempest like a silent guardian. The wind tugged at the hem of his coat, brushing past him in lazy gusts as he stood amidst wildflowers and tall swaying grass, framed by the pale blue arc of the morning sky overhead. This should be a good place, Rimuru murmured aloud, scanning the open field before him. All right, Great Sage. Where's the danger? Master. High-density magicule signature approaching rapidly. Estimated arrival time. 10 seconds or less. Rimuru's golden eyes narrowed, his expression growing taut. Less? Seriously? No sooner had the words left his mouth than the sky above him fractured with blinding light, and a boom roared like thunder. A spiraling comet of pink energy tore through the air toward him at impossible speed, its trail rupturing clouds in its wake. Rimuru's reflexes screamed. He ducked and shifted with all his might, just barely dodging as the energy sphere slammed into the hillside behind him, erupting in a violent shockwave that tossed chunks of earth into the air like broken teeth. What the actual hackus was that? Rimuru shouted, hair and slime core quivering with residual impact. The dust began to clear, revealing a figure standing within the scorched crater. The air shimmered with heat and magicules, thick enough to choke most mortals unconscious. And at the center of it all stood a small girl, barely taller than Shuna. Her expression one of pure, unchecked delight. She wore scant, almost decorative armor over her shoulders and chest, bearing much of her midriff and legs as though clothing was a distant afterthought. Her pink twin tails bobbed with each movement, bound by jewel-studded clasps, and her brilliant blue eyes sparkled with mischief. Hello. The girl chirped brightly, her voice high-pitched and cheerful. I'm Milim Nava, Demon Lord, the Destroyer. Rimuru froze. Seriously, a Demon Lord? He muttered. And she's a lowly? He straightened up, brushing dust from his coat as he regarded her warily. So, Demon Lord Milim. Huh? Why exactly are you here? Milim grinned, spinning once with the grace of a child showing off new shoes. To say hello, obviously. The valley fell quiet, the wind momentarily dying as if the world itself blinked in confusion. Milim lifted her arm and gave a slow, cheerful wave. You came all the way here. Just to say hello? Yup. Rimuru blinked, then stared. Then blinked again. He scratched his cheek slowly. You're really something else. Milim began circling him like a curious cat, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. Who, You're strong, she said with a satisfied nod. Way stronger than that stiff carrion, or even Frey, and definitely more powerful than that loser Clayman. Who are they? Rimuru asked, still trying to keep up with the conversation while secretly running calculations in his head. Oh, they're other demon lords like me. Though most of them are boring. She wrinkled her nose. Especially Clayman. He's like, extra boring. Rimuru let out a dry laugh. I feel like I'm going to need a notebook for all this. Then Milim halted abruptly, clapping her hands. Okay, let's fight. Rimuru's thoughts halted like a carriage slamming into a wall. Wait, what? Great sage, he said in his mind, panic rising, can I actually beat Milim Nava? Negative, master. Estimated power gap. Demon Lord Milim Nava is approximately 20 times stronger than your current form. Victory probability. 0.002%.
Rimuru's face paled. Seriously, 0.002%. That's not a chance. That's a death wish.
Milim took a step forward, her fists trembling with anticipation. Come on, it'll be fun. Nope. Not happening, Rimuru said quickly, holding out his hands. No fighting. I am not battling you. Milim puffed out her cheeks, stomping one foot on the ground. Why not? Everyone's so mean, no one wants to play with me anymore. Inwardly, Rimuru sighed. She's literally just a child, a ridiculously overpowered child, but still. Tell you what, he said with a calm smile. I have much better games than fighting. Wanna try those instead? Really? Milim lit up like a sun, her joy instantaneous. Before he could explain further, something yanked him roughly back by the collar. Ranga. The large black wolf materialized beside him in a blink, his fangs bared and mane bristling with aggression. Lord Rimuru. Benimaru and the others are on their way. A split second later, Benimaru appeared, face tight with battle readiness. Ranga, get Rimuru-sama out of here. We'll handle this. What? No, why? Understood, Ranga growled, and without further protest, he began to bolt down the hill, Rimuru flailing in his grip. Meanwhile, Benimaru thrust out his palm. Hellflame burst. An inferno of crimson-black fire erupted toward Milim, but the demon lord merely yawned and stepped aside, the blast scorching past her harmlessly. Xian leapt from the opposite side, swinging her massive greatsword with enough force to cleave a boulder in half. Milim caught the blade mid-swing with her bare hand, tilting her head in curiosity. Ooh! You want to fight too? Sue tried to strike from behind, silent and swift. But Milim spun and lashed out with a single kick, sending him flying into the sky like a ragdoll. Rimuru shouted from Ranga's back, "Stop that!" In a flash, he broke free of Ranga's hold and leapt forward, just in time to catch Xian as she was thrown back like a cannonball. They tumbled together, skidding across the grass. Dust settled. I'll handle this, Rimuru snapped, standing and brushing dirt from Xian's armor. Everyone, fall back. But Lord Rimuru, Benimaru protested. I said back down. His voice thundered with authority, his golden eyes shining with steel resolve. The others hesitated, then obeyed. Rimuru stepped forward once more, facing Milim as the wind picked up, his coat billowing around him. Milim beamed. Oh, so you've changed your mind? Ready to fight? Not really, Rimuru admitted, arms crossed, but looks like I don't have much choice. Milim's grin stretched wide, her fists igniting with pink energy. Then let's fight. The sky trembled. Magicules spiraled around Milim Nava like a cosmic dance, shimmering threads of pink and silver weaving together into a living aura of unchecked divinity and primordial power. The hilltop bent beneath her presence, blades of grass wilting, pebbles cracking, and the very wind freezing in place as though nature itself feared to move against the force she was about to unleash. The girl, no, the demon lord, stood with a feral grin on her lips, fists glowing with annihilation, golden anklets and crimson ribbons fluttering in the torrent of her raw power. Her twin ponytails floated upward, defying gravity as her energy reached its crescendo. Warning, Master, Magicule concentration has exceeded standard combat thresholds. Target is preparing to release a destructive force equivalent to a TIER-0 magical calamity. Immediate retreat is advised. Rimuru's throat went dry, but his resolve didn't falter. I can't run. If I lose here, Even in a mock battle, the title of guardian deity of the Jura forest will be a joke. Everyone saw me face her. If I back down now, it'll undermine everything we've built. He clenched his fists, golden eyes locked on Milim. Great sage. Give me anything, any idea, any edge. I need to hold my ground. Analyzing. One possible countermeasure found. Recommend activating unique skill. Stella and channeling, unknown, energy to construct an adaptive, law-defining barrier. Success probability. 42%. Risk. High. Stella, Rimuru whispered. All right, do it, now. Understood. Commencing configuration. The moment those words echoed in his mind, something invisible coiled around his form. Like starlight made solid, like warmth born of divine silence. The air around Rimuru warped subtly, light refracting unnaturally as if space itself rejected the notion of being touched. No symbols flared, no flashy aura burst forth, but the change was absolute. A sphere of reality, untouchable, wrapped around him in silence.
Barrier deployed. Note. Protection level insufficient against projected impact.
Rimuru flinched. Then, damn it. How much do I need to adapt this barrier to survive? Can I rewrite the rules of reality around myself? Required adaptation to reject Milim Nava's physical and magical interference. 10%. Current adaptation threshold. 15%. Feasibility. Acceptable. Proceeding with rule revision. Anything protected by the creators will cannot be touched, broken, or bypassed. Do it, Rimuru said through gritted teeth. Confirmed. Rule established. Barrier now operating under new law of reality. The change was instant and profound. Rimuru no longer stood atop the hilltop of Tempest. He stood within his own world, a space governed not by physics or fate, but by the sole decree of his will. Time didn't slow, yet everything felt distant, weightless, like the world was now observing him, not the other way around. Milim struck. There was no warning, just movement. Her body vanished from sight, propelled by ridiculous acceleration, and her fist, surging with pink and silver magicules, collided with Rimuru's barrier like a meteor colliding with a divine gate. Boom! The force of it shattered the air itself. A thunderclap ruptured the sky, the ground beneath Rimuru cratered instantly, and shockwaves rippled in concentric rings, flattening entire rows of trees hundreds of meters away. And yet, Milim's fist never touched Rimuru. Instead, the moment her blow landed, the barrier absorbed the entirety of the impact, bent under the pressure for a split second, then reflected it. A brilliant flash detonated outward, and Milim was flung back across the hilltop, skidding in a trail of torn earth and shocked laughter. Cracks spider webbed across the air around Rimuru's body, not shattered, just cracked.
Holy! Rimuru gasped, still standing. That actually worked.
Clarification. The established law is now recognized as absolute within the defined barrier. Rule. Anything protected by the creators will cannot be touched, broken, or bypassed. Result. All forms of interference, magical, physical, conceptual, are rendered null. However, caveat exists. If the impacting force carries similar energy to the unknown source used to craft the law, or if it is of unimaginable magnitude, structural integrity may fail. Rimuru's heart skipped. Wait, does that mean Milim also has this unknown energy? Unknown. Insufficient data. Partial match detected between her output and energy class. Unknown, further analysis required.
His blood ran cold, so she's got some version of the same energy, or something that mimics it.
Aside, his companions watched with awe and disbelief. Benimaru, slack-jawed, whispered, Did Lord Rimuru just deflect Milim Nava's punch? Shien's eyes sparkled with pride. I knew Rimuru-sama was incredible.
Sue narrowed his eyes, ever calculating. Even so, that power. That wasn't a skill I've seen before.
Ranga howled with joy, tail wagging. Lord Rimuru is invincible. Even the air around them seemed to buzz with reverence, because what they'd just seen defied every battle law in the world. Rimuru had repelled the punch of a demon lord whose name alone made nations tremble.
Meanwhile, at the heart of the blast zone, Milim lay on her back, eyes blinking up at the sky.
Then, she laughed. A gleeful, bell-like giggle that echoed through the valley. Ooh, that was awesome, Milim shouted. flipping to her feet with childlike glee. You actually blocked it. Nobody's ever done that before, not even Guy. Rimuru winced, his heart still thudding. Milim, seriously, can we not fight?
No way, she grinned, brushing off her clothes like this was a picnic. I'm so excited now, this is the most fun I've had in years.
But I don't want to fight you, Rimuru protested. You're like a walking natural disaster. Milim pouted, crossing her arms under her chest. But you're super strong. That means you have to fight me. He sighed internally. Of course. She's just like a kid who found a new toy. He glanced at the cracks on his barrier. But this game could end in someone's death if I let it go on. Great sage, he thought, his mind focused like a blade. Any way to stall her? Possibility. Emotional manipulation through alternative stimuli. Milim Nava exhibits childlike behavior. Suggestion. Offer alternative game that piques her interest to temporarily halt combat. Rimuru took a deep breath. Milim. What if we had a different kind of challenge? One that doesn't involve breaking me into jelly? But Milim didn't answer right away. Her fists ignited again with shimmering fire. Later, after I beat you, we can do that too. Rimuru flinched. Of course, it's never easy, is it? Milim raised her fist again, expression sparkling with anticipation. Her next attack would be even stronger. And Rimuru, battered in resolve but standing proud beneath cracked starlight, braced for the impossible.
Milim's next strike came with the cheerful fury of a summer storm. Her small fist, wrapped in spirals of shimmering pink and silver light, slammed once again against Rimuru's invisible barrier.
Crack. The sound split the air like a divine bell-tolling doom, and once again, Milim was sent hurtling backward, skidding across the scorched field with a laugh in her throat and excitement in her golden eyes. But Rimuru was not laughing. He staggered slightly, eyes wide with panic as he stared at the new fracture webbing across the shimmering sphere that clung to his skin like a second layer of existence. Great Sage. Status. How bad is it? Barrier integrity at 80%. Damage level. 20%. Magicule reserves depleted by 52%. Warning. Further direct hits will compromise defense. His breath caught. 50% gone already? I've barely lasted a few minutes.
But Milim was relentless. With no pause, no hesitation, she burst forward again, a pink comet of sheer delight and reckless destruction.
Wait, Milim. I don't want to fight, too late. Her punch came again, and this time Rimuru moved, narrowly twisting away from the strike just before it landed. The shockwave from her missed blow shattered boulders behind him. He barely had time to land before she spun on her heel and came in with a second punch, laughing as she moved, this one hitting the barrier directly. Whump. She was sent back again, though not as violently as before. Rimuru's knees buckled as he landed, gritting his teeth. Great Sage. Status again. Barrier integrity at 60%. Damage level, 40%. Magicule drain, 68%. Efficiency falling. Sustained damage expected in less than 1 minute at current pace.
Damn it, damn it, damn it, this is insane. I'm going to die getting punched to death by a child with supernova fists.
His heart pounded. Okay, Great Sage. I need the unknown energy. Now. You said there was a way to speed up adaptation, right? Use it. I don't care how dangerous. Do it. Don't let me die looking like a slime with arms. Acknowledge. Initiating accelerated synchronization with unknown energy. Danger level. Critical. Proceeding with under skill. Stella. Divine absorption. Environmental magicules now being converted and integrated into Master's core. Healing and replenishment protocol initiated. The world shifted. Rimuru felt it first in his chest, a searing warmth that wasn't pain, but something far more profound, like creation itself whispering secrets into his cells. The barrier surrounding him grew faintly more transparent, less rigid, yet more complete, a quiet hum rising from it as if the very laws of nature were holding their breath in reverence. Magicules from the air, loose, wild, chaotic, drew in around him like a spiral galaxy, absorbed through the invisible shell and poured into him as radiant vitality. His breathing slowed. The drain on his core was being filled even as he fought. But Milim wasn't waiting. She came at him again, her face alight with joy. You're still standing. That means I can keep punching. Her fist collided with the barrier again, but this time, the impact wasn't deflected. It was absorbed. Rimuru blinked in shock. Wait. It's not bouncing her back anymore. Correct. Barrier now passively negates force through reality law absorption. Milim Nava's strikes are nullified without rebound. Current adaptation to unknown energy 20%. Structural endurance improved. You may now utilize destructive level skills of mid-class power safely. 20% already? Rimuru muttered. Then maybe, just maybe. Milim launched a final punch. The barrier shattered. It didn't shatter with sound. It ceased, like glass melting into air. And her punch was coming fast, with full force. Great Sage. Reinforcing Master's form with unknown energy. Adjusting kinetic structure. Initiating Stella Enhancement Protocol. Law of Counterforce. Milim's punch struck Rimuru's fist. At the very last instant, Rimuru raised his own hand. Energy surging through his form, stabilized by a rule no one else understood. Flesh met flesh. Boom. The shockwave turned the hill into a crater. Earth surged upward in a ring of cracked soil and airborne stone. Trees toppled like dominoes, and the sky split in a thunderclap of roiling magicules. Benimaru, Shion, Ranga, and Sue were all blasted back in a whirlwind of force. Benimaru hit a boulder and slid down, coughing, his eyes wide with awe. That was Lord Rimuru's power? That's not even mortal anymore. Shion, hair tousled and armor cracked, grinned like a lunatic. Rimuru-sama, you looked so cool. Ranga, panting as he pulled himself out of the dirt, whimpered with adoration. My master is unstoppable. Sue, from the shadows, whispered, so this is what he becomes when he's serious. Dust cleared. Rimuru stood there, barely, his body trembling, arms slack at his sides, blue-silver hair tousled, the final remnants of magic crackling around him. Across from him, Milim still stood, and then, she burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. That was amazing, she cheered, hopping up and down like she hadn't just tried to atomize him. You actually stopped me. That was the best fight I've had in hundreds of years. Rimuru collapsed backward with a groan, arms flopping to his sides. I didn't think that would work. Not even for a second. Milim skipped over and plopped herself on the ground beside him, stretching her arms behind her head. You're super strong. That was so fun. He turned his head slightly, too tired to glare. Can we not fight again for a while? I don't think I can handle another one of your play punches. Milim gave a toothy grin. Okay. If you say so, I'll stop. For now, she giggled again, childlike and carefree, as if she hadn't nearly destroyed the terrain. They both lay there in silence, gazing up at the wide blue sky above, where clouds drifted slowly, unaware of the battle just fought below. Today was fun, Milim said softly, her voice like a breeze. And against all odds, Rimuru smiled. Barely, Rimuru's POV . The night was quiet, yet far from peaceful. I lay sprawled across the garden's grassy floor, arms behind my head, breathing in the cool air as it glided over the moonlit landscape, except, tonight, there was no moon. No stars. Just a yawning black sky that seemed too heavy to look at for long, the kind of sky that made you feel like it could collapse and smother you in silence. A sky void of promise. The faint scent of crushed lilies surrounded me, perhaps from where Milim had playfully thrown me head first into the flower bed earlier. Playfully, sure. My body still ached from the sheer absurdity of her strength. I'd survived, barely. Her punches had been like hammers forged by chaos, and her giddy laughter still rang in my ears even now. How was that? Wanna do it again? She had screamed midair, right before her flying kick sent me through a hill. Even with my regeneration and barrier layers, my slime core had trembled. That wasn't a spar, I muttered aloud to myself, voice dry, that was divine punishment. Indeed, Master. Survival rate during her third strike was calculated at 12.6%. Emergency reinforcement of soul barrier prevented disintegration. Thanks for the reminder, Great Sage, you're welcome, Master. I exhaled, letting my fingers brush against the cool blades of grass. Just another day of being overpowered, I guess. Still, I'd managed to hold my own. That meant something. It had to. Then, I heard it. That voice, rich, commanding, yet carrying a melody that wrapped itself around my soul like a memory long buried. It sent a jolt through me, and I bolted upright on instinct. You always lie on the ground like a corpse when you're not running for your life. I turned. My eyes widened. Velgrynd, but not the same Velgrynd I'd grown used to. Stern, elegant, hair tied in those regal twin buns, looking every bit like a goddess of flame and pride. No, tonight, she was different. Her long, dark blue hair fell loosely over her shoulders and down her back, swaying gently in the night breeze like cascading silk. The flickering aura that usually roared around her had dimmed to a calm ember. She looked almost mortal. I blinked. Wait. What, your hair? She tilted her head slightly, and to my surprise, there was a tiny glimmer of embarrassment in her eyes. Just a flicker. Then she scoffed and looked away, arms folding across her chest. I felt like changing it. It's my hair, is it not? Yeah. Yes. It's your hair, so it's your choice, I said, scratching the back of my neck. It looks good, by the way. Her golden eyes snapped back to me for a second before turning away again, lips tightening ever so slightly as if trying not to react. Was she blushing? Before I could even register that absurd possibility, she narrowed her eyes at me, brow furrowing with concern. What happened to you? Huh. I tilted my head. You look different. Stronger. Your aura. It's more refined. More dense. You grew stronger overnight. What did you do? I gave a short chuckle, rubbing the sore spot on my ribs. Oh, that. I guess, I did grow stronger. I did fight Demon Lord Milim Nava today. You what? She asked, voice sharper than before. I fought Milim, I repeated, shrugging casually like it was no big deal, even though my heart still hadn't fully recovered. She was insanely strong, but hey, I managed to hold my own for a bit. Kinda. You fought Milim? She said again, slower this time. Milim Nava? I nodded, letting my form briefly ripple for emphasis. Yup. Hyper, destructive, pink-haired missile. That one. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Impossible. Why? Velgrynd's eyes hardened. Because I know her. Milim is my elder brother's daughter. She's not someone you match. She is one of the oldest and strongest demon lords to ever exist. One blow from her should have reduced you to dust. Well, I guess she wasn't trying to kill me. I think I caught her in a playful mood, I said, attempting a sheepish grin. Unbelievable, she muttered under her breath. I stood up slowly, brushing off imaginary dust. Yeah, it is unbelievable, but it happened. The moment hung still between us, her gaze lingering on me longer than usual, unreadable, calculating. Before anything else could be said, a high-pitched squeal cut through the garden like a meteor's descent. Bstirimuruu. Before I could brace myself, a pink blur launched into my chest, sending both of us tumbling backward, right into the lake with a massive splash. I emerged first, coughing and sputtering, my body dripping wet as the little menace clung to me like a giggling barnacle. More food, bestie. Milim shouted, shaking me by the shoulders. I'm starving. I literally just recovered from your punches and now I'm drowning? Velgrynd stood at the edge of the lake, watching the chaos unfold. She looked like a monument to composure, though I could tell her eyes were twitching slightly from trying to maintain it. Milim blinked, then her face lit up. Who, Auntie Velgrynd? You're here too? Velgrynd exhaled. Unfortunately. Milim paddled in the water like a child in a bath, then turned to me again, clearly having the time of her life. Velgrynd crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. Milim, did Rimuru truly match your power? Don't exaggerate. Milim nodded enthusiastically, water sloshing around her. Yup. His barriers were so tough. They bounced me back 5 times. And when I hit him hard, he didn't even explode. It was so much fun. Velgrynd's eyes went wide. She said nothing at first. But something changed. The disbelief on her face didn't vanish, but morphed into something else. Wonder, maybe. Or confusion. She stared at me as though seeing something new for the first time, something unexpected. The air around her grew heavier, more solemn. I see, she finally said, voice quiet. I floated next to her on the edge of the lake, still soaked, looking like a half-drowned towel. Told you it was unbelievable. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, almost to herself, but I heard it. It seems, you are not as weak as I thought you were, Rimuru Ashra Tempest.
And for a moment, just a moment, her golden eyes held mine, and she didn't look away.
Not even once. Suddenly, light footsteps approached from beyond the trees, soft and sure, like wind weaving through leaves, and then, her voice, calm, firm, and unmistakably familiar. Milim, don't stay in the water too long. You'll catch a chill, Shizu said, stepping into view with her ever-gentle grace, her long black hair flowing behind her like a trailing shadow in the moonless garden. Milim, still paddling in the lake with her arms spread wide like she was swimming in an imaginary ocean, turned toward her with a dramatic pout. Boo, but it's fun, the water's not even cold. It's not about the temperature, Shizu replied, walking closer to the edge. You'll get wrinkles. Milim blinked. Wrinkles? She gasped, scrambling upright with sudden horror, her hair dripping across her cheeks. Like an old granny? Shizu chuckled softly. Exactly. With an exaggerated groan of defeat, Milim rose from the water and stomped to the shore, water dripping from her black and pink outfit in loud splashes. You're too much like a mom. Shizu gently draped a towel around her shoulders, patting her head with that same timeless patience. I'll take that as a compliment. Milim glanced up at her, eyes sparkling and voice suddenly small. Are you not scared? Shizu tilted her head. Of what? Milim's voice was nearly a whisper. Of me. I'm a demon lord, you know that, right? A pause followed, but then came Shizu's smile, soft, unshaken, the kind of smile that reached the soul. Demon lord or not, you're still adorable. I can't be scared of someone this cute, can I? My brows rose instinctively. Shizu always had a way with people, even if the people in question could crack mountains like eggshells. I crossed my arms, grinning. Besides, you're basically a kid. Of course she's not scared.
Milim spun toward me, cheeks puffed out in indignation. I'm not a kid, I'm over 2,000 years old.
Shizu, unfazed, wiped the sides of Milim's face. Age doesn't matter. You still act like one. Milim sulked, muttering something that sounded like, meanie, under her breath.
Come on, Shizu continued, taking Milim's hand. Let's get you into something more modest. You can't keep walking around in those revealing clothes.
But those are my favorite, Milim cried, clutching the edge of her barely there outfit like it was sacred armor. I coughed politely. Milim, just go with Shizu, all right, please. She glanced at me. If you say so, bestie. Still mumbling, Milim let herself be led away by the hand like a child being taken home from a festival, pink hair trailing behind her like a comet tail, her aura unusually subdued. The moment she was gone, the garden settled into silence again. The lake rippled once and then calmed. I turned, feeling the presence still lingering behind me, heat like embers, not oppressive, but commanding. Velgrynd. She stood a few paces away, the breeze lifting strands of her dark blue hair, her back to me. Arms crossed beneath the crimson shawl that now hugged her shoulders like a royal mantle. She hadn't left yet. I scratched my cheek awkwardly. Sorry about all that. Milim's just being Milim. Velgrynd didn't move for a moment. Then her voice, quiet but clear, broke the silence. There is nothing to apologize for. She turned around slowly, golden eyes catching the light in a way that made them look like molten crowns, pride shimmering in every breath she took. Then, softly. Rimuru, I perked up, surprised by the sudden gentleness. Yeah? She looked at me, and then to the sky, as though reluctant to meet my gaze. I've been thinking about your offer, the one where you asked if I would consider living here in Tempest. My heart skipped, not metaphorically, it genuinely skipped, and I might be able to, she said after a pause, but I will need some time. I'm not used to this kind of place. Or people. Or. I smiled, probably more than I should have, the muscles in my face struggling to contain the joy that surged through me. That's amazing. I mean, take all the time you need, seriously. Just knowing you're considering it, it makes me really happy. She blinked once, then looked away, and I swore I saw the faintest hue of pink warm her cheeks. And then, so quietly I almost missed it, except I didn't. I really said that, I actually said that to him, she murmured under her breath, almost inaudibly. But I heard it. Loud and clear. I didn't let it show. Instead, I smiled gently, the kind you reserve for things too precious to hold too tightly. Well, whenever you're ready, we'll be here. Velgrynd turned halfway, her long hair sweeping behind her like a banner, and for a moment I thought she might take it back. But instead, she spread her wings, majestic and blazing crimson, stretching wide against the starless sky. I'll be going then. I nodded. Come back soon. With a single beat of her wings, she launched into the air, fire trailing in her wake like ribbons, the sky parting around her as though honoring her passage. She didn't look back. And I stood there for a long time, watching the heavens close behind her trail of flame. She's amazing, I muttered, unable to hide the awe. Prideful, stubborn, terrifying, but amazing. Your emotional reaction is 46% higher than standard baseline when referring to her. Hypothesis. You are experiencing romantic interest. Would you like me to analyze further, Master?
I flinched. Gee, great sage, don't analyze that. Understood. Refraining from further romantic analysis. For now.
Geez, give me a break. Embarrassed and still smiling like an idiot, I turned back toward the mansion, my wet clothes clinging annoyingly to my form. But my heart felt light. And as I walked beneath the dark sky, I couldn't help but think about what she'd said. About how she might live here, with us. With me. Velgrynd. In Tempest. Somehow, the thought made the world feel warmer. Like her fire had already begun to melt the distance between us. To be continued.